Okay, so hi everyone. Welcome to tonight's virtual event with Brookline Booksmith featuring Julia Cameron for her book, The Listening Path, in conversation with Joel Fotinos. My name is Bree and I am Assistant Events Director at Brookline Booksmith in Brookline, Mass. If you're familiar with our store, welcome back. And if this is your first time you're hearing about us, welcome. We're very happy to have you all join our community this evening, and we appreciate your support of the author and independent bookstore through your purchase and attendance. The chat and question box are open, which I know you've all been making use of, which is fantastic. Remember to set your chat to all panelists and attendees so that you can talk to other audience members, and please drop your questions in the Q&A box. If my suspicions are correct, the chat is going to be moving really quickly tonight, so we don't want to lose your questions. Please note that Brookline Booksmith has a strict policy against abusive behavior and language, and at our discretion, any attendees can be removed from an event for partaking in such behavior. Joel Fotinos, Julia's longtime editor and publisher at Macmillan imprint, St. Martin's Essential, will be joining us this evening for the conversation. Joel, thank you so much for joining us. Julia Cameron, the woman of the hour, is credited with starting a movement in 1992 that has brought creativity to the mainstream conversation in the arts and business and everyday life. She is the best-selling author of more than 40 books, fiction and nonfiction. She's a poet, a songwriter, a filmmaker, and a playwright. Commonly referred to as the godmother or high priestess of creativity, her tools are based in practice, not theory, and she considers herself the floor sample of her own toolkit. The Artist's Way has been translated into 40 languages and sold over 5 million copies to date, and I know that everyone here is so excited for The Listening Path, a transformational journey to deeper, more profound listening and creativity. Over 6 weeks, you, the readers, will be given the tools to become better listeners to your environment, the people around you, and yourselves. So at this time, I'm going to turn the stage over to Julia and Joel. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm very happy to be here. This is a celebration. It's the first day of book launch. It's the first event, and we are thrilled that you've turned out in the chilly weather, or you stayed tucked at home in a cozy place, watching us on Zoom. And we are both very happy to bring this book forward. It began in 2018 with a lunch with Joel, and he said to me, "What are you thinking about?" And I said, "I'm thinking about listening." And he said, "Oh, I would love to hear more about that." And his curiosity became the catalyst for 2 years of writing. And we are thrilled to finally have the book in hand and able to share with you. So thank you for coming out. Thank you for supporting us. Thank you for supporting the book. And we'll start talking. I'll turn it back over to Joel. Okay.
All right. I remember that lunch so clearly. We were near the Flatiron Building in a restaurant in New York City called Almond. And when you said that, you didn't just say it, you also had some writing with you and you read to me. And I can tell this group that it's such a special and wonderful experience to sit at lunch with Julia talking about creativity and having her read her writing to you. It was wonderful, and I knew at that moment that this was going to be a very special book. So I'm really thrilled and curious to hear the questions that people have, and I have some questions that I thought we could go through tonight. And by the way, Julia, I don't know if you see the chat, Dominica is here too. So It's
Aha,
great to see
Dominica
you.
is my daughter.
Hey, Dominica. So this is a question that I had that I thought would be interesting for everybody, which is that it's been about 5 years since your last creativity book came out, which was this book. It's Never Too Late to Begin Again. And that's really the longest period between your books, at least since I've been working with you since 1996. Was that 5 years a period of listening? And how did that period of time shape this book?
I think, yes, it was a period of listening. I moved from New York, which is loud, noisy, hectic, busy, to calm, sweet, gentle Santa Fe. And when I got there, I I sort of freaked out. It was like so quiet. And I found myself listening more closely to the environment, hoping to hear sounds. And I heard ravens cawing, and I heard songbirds trilling, and I heard distant trucks rumbling by on dirt roads. And I found myself thinking, oh, there are many cues and clues in my environment if only I tune in instead of tuning out. So I came up with the first tool of the listening path, which was listening to your environment. A lot of times we go through a day and we have sounds that are unpleasant, and so we tune them out. And I said, don't tune them out. Tune in and see what you think you can possibly change. So I asked people to keep a log of the sounds that they were hearing during the day. And I found myself feeling uh, that it was a heightened experience for people to actually actively listen. So that was the very first tool. And then the very second tool was listening to our peers. And this is something that I love in Joel. He's a wonderful listener. He leans forward and says, I'm curious about that. And you can feel the curiosity coming toward you in waves. And I have often said that Joel was my publisher, but he was also my muse. And when he moved from Tarcher to St. Martin's Press, I promised, I'll follow you. And we did.
We've
And
we've had our partnership. This is our silver anniversary year, Julia. 25 years.
well, it's been 25 blessed years. And I found I found a great comfort uh, in in Joel's presence. And I wanted to have him talk with us today uh, because I think he sometimes is anonymous. I'm out front with the book saying, read this book, please. And he's seated behind his desk, quietly thinking, read this book, please.
A
Go
little bit,
ahead.
yeah, somewhat quiet. Um, you know, Julia, when I was just rereading this book in preparation for tonight, I was struck by how personal your books are. And I feel like this is one of the most personal books that you've done yet. The stories, when I think people are going to be so delighted to read it, because when you read the stories, it's like you're right there with Julia and with her dog and in her environment as well, and it's great. Um, One of the things that amazed me, though, as I was rereading the book in preparation for this, is just how perfectly timed this book is, both in terms of the pandemic that we're living in, where people are at home largely, and also during the events of the last, few days and weeks, where listening is really something that is really important. How do you see this book helping us right now? I mean, it was conceived a couple years ago, but the timing of it couldn't be better. How do you think this book can help people right now?
Well, I feel like we're in a period of enforced solitude, and many of us are turning inward and finding ourselves being more introspective and finding ourselves no longer defined by the markers that were defining us before. Uh, Many of us are working from home or not working at all. And we have a an experience of anxiety as the pandemic goes rolling along. And I know when it first started, we thought, oh, it'll be 2 weeks.
Right.
And now it's more likely going to be 2 years. And what I found with the listening path was that it channeled people's energies. It gave them a focus. It gave them a path to go forward. And uh, I think that the timing, I want to say, is divine timing. And when we started the book, we couldn't foresee the events of the future. And now that we're living the events of the future, we need tools which help us to metabolize them. And so the listening path starts out with 3 basic tools: uh, morning pages, artist dates, and walks. And these 3 tools, which are familiar to people from the Artist's Way, are tools that all heighten our introspection and our listening. They move us closer to being our authentic selves. And I think becoming our authentic selves is the silver lining of the pandemic. I think we are discovering that we're pretty interesting.
We saw a brief moment of Lily, by the way, behind you. Uh, so with that timing, you said something in your interview with Forbes.com where people had criticized you for including the 3 tools, morning pages, artist date, and walking, in your books, and called it repetitive. And you had such a brilliant reply to that. Why do you continue to put those in the books? And do you, if you recall your reply in that interview?
Well, I'm not sure what I said then, but what I would say now is that it's important that the tools be simple and repetitive. And I was reviewed and they said, Cameron's tools are simple and repetitive. And I think it was intended as an insult, but I took it as a compliment. I thought tools should be simple and repetitive. And if a tool works, why change it? So at this point, as they said in the introduction, 5 million people are doing morning pages. So I think we have to say they're not gullible.
Right.
They're doing them because they work.
They work. And it's perfect to put them at the beginning of the listening path, because in a way, people who do the Artist's Way do 12 weeks. And in a way, these are the next 6 weeks that you can do right at the end of the Artist's Way. What do you think, or how do you think that the listening path can take people further along the Artist's Way journey?
Well, I think that the tools of the Artist's Way are tools of listening. and that people work with the tools of the 12-week program, and they become better listeners. But then I say, now focus on that. That's not just an accident. It's not just a byproduct. It's actually the root of creativity, where we listen. I think you might want to call it to the still small voice. I think it's important to say that it's a spiritual toolkit, and that they have a heightened spiritual awareness from using the tools. So I think that they are a continuation of the artist's way, and a deepening of the artist's way. And I think uh, having it be a 6-week course gives people a manageable amount of time uh, to work with the tools. And somebody said to me, well, why is it 6 weeks, not 12 weeks? And the answer is because 6 weeks work.
I might have been that person that asked that question. I can say to the people here listening that when Bree gave the introduction and said that Julia likes to be called the floor sample for her tools, that is so absolutely true. And specifically with this book, The Listening Path, I can say over the last 25 years, we've published many books together. And oftentimes I'll say, what are you thinking, Julia? Julia will say, well, I'm beginning to hear, and then she'll say whatever the next thing is. And I remember one time you said, I'm beginning to hear prayers. And do you remember that? And and then another time you said, I'm hearing a book about weight and weight loss. And I thought, what is she talking about? But you were listening deeply, and that book became a wonderful book called The Writing Diet. And the prayers became a series of books, and other projects as well. You've always listened a lot. Do you think that listening is, everything's so noisy in the world today, that listening is almost like the most important tool people could learn about right now, not just for creativity, especially for creativity, but also for all walks of their life? People are really hearing so much noise around them.
Well, I think many people that I know are addicted to the news. And so they're living at home, but instead of living in quiet and calm, they're living with CNN talking to them at all hours of the day and night. And I think that it's a period where we can choose, we can elect to have a calm environment. But I don't think many people have thought much about it. And that's why the first tool of the listening path, listening to your environment, is so important.
Yeah, so that you can begin to hear what's happening instead of hear the noise.
Yes, and I think it's important. I want to talk a little bit further. Um, so the first tool is listening to your environment. The second tool is listening to your peers, listening to your intimates without interrupting them, allowing them to finish their thoughts. And they often surprise you when you allow them to finish their thoughts. They don't say what you think they're going to say. And the third tool is one called listening to your higher self. And this is something that I feel is very important, because many of us are attuned to listening to others. We have a problem, and instead of saying, what do I think about this? What should I do about this? We take a poll of our friends and we think, who's the wisest person I know? I'll ask them. And what we don't realize often is that maybe we are the wisest person I know. So I asked them to do some written guidance. And this is where I'm sort of a fanatic. Uh, I, I've been a writer since I was 18, and I'm 72 now. So that's many years of writing. And I believe that if we write our answers out, can I have guidance about X? And then we listen, and then we do hear guidance. And if we write it down, then we can go back and read it later. And it's better than just holding on to it as an intuition or a hunch.
Mhm.
So
And in fact, the next two tools for the fourth and the fifth also deal with written guidance as well. Do you want to maybe explain what those are?
well, the fourth tool is a tool that it took a little bit of courage to use.
Yes.
It's called Listening Beyond the Veil. And what I ask you to do is to be open-minded and to see if you can't hear with what a friend of mine calls the ear behind the ear. And you're listening to hear from dead people who have passed on. And we live in a culture where we consider that when people are dead, they're gone. And if we were living in Japan, we would have a history of listening to our ancestors. And I think it takes open-mindedness to try this. You think of someone that you love who's passed on, and you say, can I hear from X about whatever the issue is? And I found that I came to this tool through experience. I had a girlfriend who was in her 90s when she passed. Her name is Jane Cecil. And I was used to talking to Jane almost every day and getting her feedback and advice and her sagacious wisdom. And when she died, I felt bereft. And I thought, I still need to hear from Jane. And then I thought, maybe I can still hear from Jane. So I wrote, can I hear from Jane? And then I listened and I heard, Julia, you're on the right path. And I thought, oh dear, am I becoming too woo-woo? And so when I wrote this chapter of the book, I thought, I hope they don't consider me too woo-woo. I hope people are going to be open-minded enough to experiment with this tool.
You do say, though, on page 148, you say, but Julia, what if your responses from the afterlife are just wishful thinking? And you have such a great answer. You say, if so, my wishful thinking leads me in a positive direction. There can be no harm in the positive. The contact bolsters our self-worth. And then you go on. And that allows people to take this tool and make it however it most works for them.
Yes, I think we listen and we hear something, and then we think, is it just my imagination? It's so easy. And I found myself saying, well, maybe it's easy, maybe it's woo, but maybe it works.
Right.
Because I would get guidance that seemed very wise, and it was in the same tone as Jane had used in life. And so I found myself thinking, oh, I talked to a girlfriend of mine who's a Jungian analyst. And I said to her, I'm writing a chapter and I'm worried that it's too woo-woo. And Bernice said to me, Julia, woo-woo is where it's at.
Well, I think when people read it, you know, if they're open to thinking that they're connecting, it certainly invites them to do that. And if they want to feel like they're just connecting to the quality of that person in them, you invite them to be open to that, or whatever level they want. But as you say, it's the tool, not the where it comes from so much, that is important. And connected to that one, though, is tool number 5.
And that's a tool called listening to your heroes. And so often we have people that we never met, but we admire. A lyricist might admire Oscar Hammerstein. An animator might admire Walt Disney. A teacher might admire Joseph Campbell. If you like horses, you might like the writer Dick Francis. So what I say is try reaching out to your heroes and see what you hear back, if anything. And so you say, can I hear? One of my heroes is Bill Wilson, who was the founder of Alcoholics Anonymous, one of the founders. And I admire him for having the courage to start a movement, to believe that the tools that had worked for his sobriety could work for others. And so I say, can I hear from Bill Wilson? And I hear, Julia, you're doing well. And I think, oh, goody. And I find that when you reach to your heroes, you're reaching for the attributes that your heroes had that you may find yourself missing or wishing you had more of. And I had a friend say to me, Julia, my hero was Einstein. And I reached out to Einstein, and the next day I was smarter. So reaching to the heroes is another exercise in open-mindedness. And again, we say, well, what if it's my imagination? And the answer is, if it's your imagination is terrific.
Right. And what is imagination anyway? Who are some of your other heroes? I'm just curious.
Well, Carl Jung.
Mm-hmm. He's in the book.
Yes, I found him formal and kind. Bill Wilson is like Julia. Carl Jung is like Miss Cameron. And I think that the heroes that I single out in the book are personal. And I think it's important to say that with heroes, it's your own value system that counts. A lot of times we don't admire people that we should admire. We do admire people that we do admire.
Yeah. Going back up to the tool 4, listening beyond the veil, there can be, when we contact people, family or loved ones, there can also be, some complications that we have with those people. Do you think that this is a way that we can maybe work through some of the issues that maybe block us creatively and in our lives with certain people?
I would say yes. I think a lot of times people think, well, do I need to reach to people who feel benevolent to me? And I would say, yes, that's a very good
A
idea.
good start. Yes.
That's a good place to start. And I think that the feedback that you get when you say, Mom, I never understood your struggles. And then you listen and she says, well, you understand them now.
Mm,
And I think what we find when we reach beyond the veil is that people who reach back to us are kind. So you don't need to be spooked.
that's nice. That's really good. Yeah. Maybe they've learned as well. And you have a sixth tool as well, the sixth listening tool.
And that's listening to silence.
Is that like meditation, or how is it different than meditation?
I'd say it's like meditation, but it's more casual. I think a lot of times when people meditate, they they take on a formality, and they take on a rigidity, and they take on a, a discipline that maybe doesn't serve them. And when I say listen to silence, it's calm, it's gentle, and it is meditation, but we don't often think of meditation as being so easy.
Hmm.
And
That's right.
I think that the sixth tool, listening to silence, is a tool of ease. And people are often afraid of silence. And I say, just try it.
Just try it. I'm excited. I see there's a lot of questions, so we should probably get to those. I'm so excited for people to read this book because for all these years I've heard you say when people ask you how is it that you've written so many books, your answer is always because I listen. And I love the idea that people are going to be actively listening so that they can fulfill their creative endeavors and listen to their life in a way that maybe they have never done before, which is very, very exciting. Bree, do you want to come back and help
Yeah,
Mod-
absolutely.
moderate the questions?
Yeah, we have a ton of really great questions. I'm excited for this. All right, so I'm going to go chronologically. Hi, Julia. I've been through a lot of trauma in my life. I used to journal in a memoir style until I hit rock bottom. I've recently come around to writing again, but I'm struggling. Do you have any advice for a writer at heart that's struggling to find her way back to writing about hard life experiences?
I would say write morning pages. I realize I sound like a fanatic, uh, but my experience has been that pages coax you into further writing. They're gentle, and when you write pages, you look at not only the hard, but also the easy. And uh, I think if you start with pages, and you tell yourself they can be about anything and everything, that you will find uh, that they open unsuspected doors.
And I think the next question is a really nice um, transition from that because it is how do I expand on the practice of morning pages to truly build my ability to listen and grow?
I'm not sure I heard the question.
How can I expand on my practice of morning pages to truly build my ability to listen and grow?
All right. I want to say that Joel is saying, yes, you could use the listening path, that what you're doing, uh, with morning pages is that you are constantly digging a little bit deeper in a gentle way. So I think that the answer to how can I expand on morning pages is I can keep doing morning pages. And I've been doing them now for over 30 years. And I have many mornings where I say, oh, I'm too grumpy to do pages, but I've learned to do them anyway. And when I do, uh, they lead me to pay dirt. Uh, they lead me forward. So if you are looking for a way to expand on your morning pages, the answer is simply do your morning pages.
And it sounds to me like morning is time to be gentle, right? You wake up, you do your gentle morning pages, you do some gentle yoga. So this next question is, how do you stop putting pressure on yourself to channel a creative voice? I understand your idea for listening in on life, but I find myself autocorrecting thoughts and judging my writing before it's even fully inked onto paper.
So I'm feeling like I'm going to be a complete fanatic tonight, saying to you gently, do morning pages, do them every day, do them without judgment. There's no wrong way to do a morning page. Uh, if you have a hostile thought, you write down, I'm having a hostile thought. If you write, I'm exuberant, you write, I'm exuberant. Uh, and your thoughts range from the petty to the profound. And as you do them, uh, you become intimate with yourself. You become more authentically connected to what you truly think and truly feel. And I think I want to put in a plug for artist dates. Uh, an artist date is a once a week solo expedition to do something that enchants or interests you. It's fun. And when I say I have a tool, it's a nightmare. You have to get up 45 minutes early. They say, oh, work on my creativity. I understand work. I can do that. And people take to morning pages. But then when I say, now I want you to go out once a week and play, people are like, play? I don't see what play has to do with working on your creativity. And I say, well, we have an expression, the play of ideas. And we don't realize that it's a prescription, play, and you will get ideas. So in order to answer the question, I want to say, do morning pages, but take artist dates and allow yourself to be a little bit festive. And I think what happens when you are allowing yourself to be festive is that you sense a benevolent universe. And that makes it all much gentler.
I love that. And it sounds like even if as you're doing morning pages, you have judgmental thoughts, you need to not be judgmental to yourself about being judgmental, right?
Right. What I think I want to say is that when you write morning pages, your critic will say, oh, you're being boring. Oh, you've said that before. And what you just learn to say to your critic is, thank you for sharing. And you keep right on writing. And it trains your critic that you can step past it into an endeavor. So your critic, my critic is named Nigel. And Nigel is a gay British interior decorator. And Nigel has impossibly high standards. And Joel is familiar with my talking to him about Nigel.
Oh, I'm familiar with, I've met Nigel many, many times. But I have a character, I have an aspect that I call Rolf. And Rolf deals with Nigel very well.
I'm going to try that the next time I get critical of my own writing. I'm just going to make up a critic so I can talk to them and it's not me.
It actually works. It's really phenomenal.
So our next question is similar in spirit. This person has been doing morning pages on and off for almost 4 years since doing the Artist's Way course in 2017. The pages have helped overall, but they find that after months of doing morning pages consistently, the writer tends to get frustrated and stop because of a plateau. Morning pages become an echo chamber where my thoughts go unchecked and I ruminate on the same frustrations, complaints, and grievances. Do you have any techniques, approaches, or recommendations that you personally use for morning pages?
Well, I'm stubborn. So I just keep writing them. And when my critic is critical, I say, thank you for sharing, and I keep right on writing. And I have a friend that I taught with 20 years ago, and he called me recently, and he was upset. And I said to him, are you still doing morning pages? And he said, well, whenever I get in trouble, I do morning pages. And I said to him, well, sweetheart, if you did them consistently, you probably wouldn't get in trouble.
A
And
person may also want to, pick up the Listening Path or other Julia books to keep being maybe guided in different ways or have new tools to work with in their morning pages. So if they feel that things are plateauing or getting stagnant, here is new information. Here are new ways of Julia's new Artist's Way tools that they can use to get beyond that.
it may frame morning pages a different way in their mind if they're thinking with new tools.
New tools. And certainly if your life is stagnant and you're using a book called The Listening Path, it means that your life is trying to say something, or if you're plateaued, rather, was the word they used.
Not that anyone's life is stagnant right now. We're all very busy and we have a lot to do.
But it'll be exciting if that person does the Listening Path to see what life is trying to say to them.
For sure. Julia, you have been doing morning pages for years and years, and you've written thousands and thousands of them. Our next question is, what is the key to a consistent and fulfilling writing routine? How do you, for so many years, wake up 45 minutes early and keep writing those pages?
I just do it.
You're stubborn.
I'm stubborn. I believe that they work. I've had experience with them leading me forward. When I feel stuck or stagnant, I say to the pages, I'm stuck, I'm stagnant. I use the pages as a place to vent. And I think when people feel stuck and stagnant, they need to be candid about it in the pages, not trying to ignore it, not trying to push aside their concerns. And I think I think it's important that people learn to play. And I think that pages will suggest playful things, and we will say, I couldn't do that. And then they'll suggest it again, and you'll think, well, maybe I could try that. And then they suggest it again, you think, all right, God damn it, I'll do it. So I think the combination, you're building a radio kit, a spiritual radio kit. With morning pages, you're sending. And when you take an artist date, you're receiving. And you need to use both tools together in order to have a sense of equilibrium.
And our next question is, why do you think easy, playful, gentle is so hard for people to accept?
I think we live in a critical culture. I think when we go to school, we're taught to criticize, not to build. We're taught to critique things and look for the negative. And I think we're so trained by our schools to think critically that we find it difficult when I say, just be gentle. I think that sounds to people like a threatening idea because it's not the way they've been schooled.
They're afraid they'll get in trouble with the perpetual teacher if if they're playful or goofing off or daydreaming, but that's the point, right?
Exactly.
So how do you as a writer engage in authenticity on the paper unabashedly and without fear yourself?
Well, here we go again. I do morning pages and I let the pages vent. And I sometimes write, I'm grumpy. I'm crabby. I don't feel like doing these pages their work. Oh dear, I've only written one page and I have two to go. And I think the habit of honesty is developed through pages. And I think I have been using them for such a long time that I've made friends with their hostility.
That's a great way to look at it. So for our next question asker, do you have any advice for a teacher that wants to raise the next generation of creative writers, but also writers who are intuitive? What practices and habits can work for students?
Here we go again. I would have your students doing morning pages. And I would tell them their secret. Don't show them to anyone. They're top secret, they're personal, they're yours alone. And I think that as you share the secrecy of morning pages, it becomes enticing to students. And I think when you talk about wanting to raise the next generation of writers, I think you need to talk about coaxing rather than discipline.
Many students, by the way, or schools use Artist Way tools in the schools now, which is really phenomenal. A lot of teachers in various grades, middle school, high school, and college.
I wonder, would you suggest those students take their own time first thing in the morning to do morning pages? Or could in class you have morning pages at the beginning of class to kind of warm up and get those pages and words out?
In a perfect world, they take their own time to do them early in the morning. But if that's not possible, if their lives are structured so that they hit the page running, then I think having a little time in class for free form writing is a good idea.
I only asked because I remember my career as a high school student waking up 15 minutes before the bus was going to arrive. So in a perfect world, I mean, even today, I would like to get up earlier than I do. So Julia, how do you feel about reverse engineering your idea of admiring and listening to heroes? For instance, would it work to listen in to advice, feedback, or criticism, but in a way that informs in a different sense? Is there room for criticism on the listening path? If so, how can we lean into criticism without it being at the highest volume? So can we take criticism constructively on the listening path without letting it overpower play?
I think that we need to be in touch with the benevolent something. And I think that's a discipline that we set for ourselves. When we're looking for our heroes, we say, what can you constructively tell me? And then we listen. And I think I think that people, I'm listening to the questions and feeling like people are being harsh and searching in ways that may not serve them.
So the last two questions we have in the Q&A box are actually the same thing. And I was wondering this too, and I'm sure a ton of people are wondering, do you ever go back and read old morning pages? And do you suggest that people do that?
Well, when I teach, I sometimes say, give it about 9 weeks before you go back and peek. And people say sometimes, well, Julia, I want to reread them right away. But what I have found is that people are afraid of missing something, that if they don't go back and reread them, they will miss something important. And I have found that pages are a nudge, and that if something is important, they will bring it up repeatedly. So I think it's not necessary to go back and read them. For years, I saved my morning pages because I said to myself, if I ever write a memoir, I'll need these. Then I was assigned by Joel to write a memoir. And what I found is that I never looked at the morning pages. So, so shred them, burn them, mutilate them, destroy them, toss them, and they will still have done their job of raising your consciousness.
Somebody asked, what's the name of the memoir? It came out a number of years ago. It's called Floor Sample.
That's perfect.
And it's wonderful. And one of the things you learn that's really timely to this conversation is that throughout Julia's life, and this is one of the things that I absolutely admire most about her, through every up and every down of her life, she has used these tools consistently through it all. When she's had very, very difficult times in life, the morning pages, artist dates, and walking, she does them and it gets her through. And she is really, of all the authors I've ever worked with, I think she is the purest author in the sense that she lives these teachings so completely. And so, you know, if Julia can write these morning pages and do the artist date, and nobody's talking about the walking tool, but also the walking, then she's a great example for all of us to do the same thing.
We
Well,
actually, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I just want to say I'm so aware that I may sound fanatic in telling people repeatedly the tools are the answer, but the tools are the answer. They have been my experience for 3 decades, and I don't expect them to let me down now.
So we have a couple more minutes.
There's some
Julia-
questions in the chat, by the way.
Yep, there's actually a few people dropping them into the Q&A. So I'm excited about beginning to use the new tool, the Listening Beyond the Veil. I want to use them to attempt to connect with my biological father, who I recently found out passed away by suicide at age 18. He likely didn't know that he fathered a child, and I have so many questions. Do you think this is possible?
Yes.
And next, thank you, Julia, for all of your writing. As a Morning Pages practitioner since 2012, and I am a Morning Pages practitioner since 2012, and I even get a group to do it with me in Vietnamese, my mother language, for more than 1 year. I told them about you as the mother of the Morning Pages tool, and I wonder if you have anyone who inspired you, who you inspired to do Morning Pages in the first place. Thank you for being here.
So I had something interesting happen this year. I did an interview with a man named Brian Kopelman, who is a very successful Hollywood writer. And he said, Julia, I'm an atheist. And I said, oh, well, I'm a believer. And we just sort of looked at each other a little bit. And then he said, I've been doing Morning Pages for 22 years, and I have written 13 feature films. And I said to him, well, clearly you don't believe in God, but God believes in you. And I had another experience. I had a man say to me, Julia, I'm an atheist and a Jew, and I don't think these are your target audiences. But what I have found is that the books resonate for me. So I said to him, oh, goody.
If it works, right? Even if it's not the target demographic.
Yes.
All right, and let's see, we could wrap it up with one last question, especially timely. Do you have any suggestions for artist days during the pandemic?
Yes. Take a bubble bath. Paint your toenails and your fingernails scarlet. Sketch a familiar object. Make a vision board. Listen to a podcast that you wouldn't ordinarily listen to. Listen to some music that's unusual for you. And try and devise things in your own household that are of interest. If you have an opportunity to look at a children's book all about reptiles, all about big cats.
I love it. Wrapping that up with self-care and just being at home and taking care of yourself and your inner artist is fantastic. I know I'll be doing those things.
Thank you, Bree.
Me too.
Yeah, Julia, Joel, thank you so much. Tonight has been fantastic. And thank you for everyone coming to watch us. And I hope you enjoyed the book. Stay safe, everyone. Enjoy the listening path.